In this, the final episode of Concept Cars, we thought we'd visit the car capital, Detroit, Michigan, to get an overview of some of the notable concepts through history. But first, we have to ask, why did Detroit end up as the main center of car manufacture?
Detroit had a lot of advantages, actually, that it shared with a number of other American cities. It had good rail access and it had water access, and it had at the turn of the 19th century, it had a very diversified industrial economy. Another historian has summed it up very nicely. He said, more than any other American city, Detroit seemed to have people in it who would rather go broke building automobiles than get rich doing something else.
In the early days, there were all sorts of strange concepts developed that were aimed at the rich as their next plaything. But in Detroit, there was a whole group of car designers who realized that motoring was really for the masses.
The other thing that was one of Detroit's secrets was that most of these guys were attracted to the lower priced end of the market rather than the upper end. And that turns out, that's where the money was. That's where the mass market was.
Ford was, of course, the king of mass production. But even though he used machinery as much as possible, his factories were still very labor-intensive places. This famous mural in Detroit's Institute of Art gives us a flavor of what the early car factories were like.
The very early car plants were not really manufacturing plants. They were just assembly plants. Because what these guys did was they contracted everything out to all these machine shops and places that existed in Detroit, and they just brought the parts together in a big open building and assembled them into cars. And they did it what they call station assembly. Ford revolutionized it when he developed, over a course of a few years, developed their assembly line.
The assembly line was a revolution, as workers had to do just one simple job all day.
Rather than one crew moving from job to job, the jobs actually came to the people stood stationary and the work flowed by and they had to keep up with the work. The problem Henry Ford encountered was that nobody wanted to do the work. And so what Ford did, thinking, if I pay people enough, they'll do almost anything. And he essentially doubled the wage for unskilled work, which is what most of the assembly line work was.
Suddenly, this massive pay rise, which had to be copied by the other local factories, attracted the very best workers to Detroit, not just on the production line.